Welcome, perfectionists. I hope that you're excited to have your own personalized therapy session, courtesy of Xander Crofts, unlicensed. This video is a little bit on the longer side, as you can already see. The reason for that is because I did not design it to help as many people as I possibly could. I designed it to help a very specific kind of person as much as I possibly could. Okay, and so what we're going to be doing, rather than speaking in general terms, we're going to dive really deep into one young man's story, a young man named Ken, who suffered from perfectionism, his why behind that, the psychological and emotional background that he came from, and then how in one session with his therapist, he was able to beat his perfectionism, save his professional future, all by simply reframing a little bit the way that he was thinking about his problem, so that his personality, which was already there, worked then for him rather than against him. If you relate with Ken, as I do, I guarantee you this will be among the most valuable videos you'll ever watch when it comes to beating your perfectionism once and for all. All right, so to get started here, we have to get a little bit of background on Ken. Who Ken is, what shaped him to have the motives that are leading now to his perfectionism. The emotional background of a person, I think, is so fundamental, but when you watch like a Tony Robbins video, for example, not that I don't find value in those, and I respect the hell out of Tony Robbins, but this is deep, going into the background of somebody and looking at what shaped them emotionally. I'm not talking about in-depth psychoanalysis, like Freudian type, what are the problems, what are the problems, what are the problems? That's problem focused, and that's not what we're doing here. I'm just talking about understanding a little bit about the story that shaped the emotional dynamics so that we can understand then, if this is relatable to us, how we can go about finding a solution, which is going to be offered here in this video, okay? But in order to really make this feel like a customized video, I want you, while I'm reading this and while we're going through the rest of the video, as best you can, draw the parallels between Ken's life and your own, okay? Much like I've done, because I see so much of myself in Ken, it's unreal. For example, Ken's a medical student, and his career, his medical student and otherwise career, means so much more to him than just school, if you know what I mean. And for me, I have something similar. It's not college for me. What I care about that way is selling solar here in Austin, Texas, or just succeeding in general here in Austin, Texas. Making this YouTube channel and building a following of people that know, like, and trust me, that's all really, really important to me. The main thing that's tying us both together, we're chasing our independence. We're writing our own story. And therefore, success means more than just like success. It means our independence. It means who I am. It's my self-esteem. Anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself, but I'm hoping that if there's something like that for you, you'll be able to draw those parallels and get much more value out of the video. Let's go into the background of who Ken was. Ken first came to me after he failed the first two pathology exams. He was petrified at the thought of failing the course, for this would prevent him from moving on to the clinical portion of his medical education. It would also damage his chances of landing a residency in a competitive medical specialty. The remaining two exams, Ken knew, were going to make or break him. He needed every ounce of motivation and concentration he could muster, but he could muster none. After studying his heart out to the point of literally pulling multiple all-nighters, Ken only had failing grades to show for his efforts. To his complete befuddlement and frustration, he studied the same material as other students and yet scored significantly lower. Even more maddening, he consistently achieved high scores when he took practice exams, only to find the material flying out of his head during the actual test. He was so upset by his lack of success on the first test that he resolved to do whatever it took to pass the course. He spent his evenings, his nights, and weekends in non-stop study, losing both sleep and weight in the process. That came to a crashing halt with the second exam. After his long hours and endless days of studying, Ken's score was no different than the one on the previous exam. he failed. With that, for the first time, Ken realized that he might actually fail the largest course of his second curricular year. As he watched his grades fall in his other courses due to the exclusive emphasis that he was placing on pathology, he realized with horror that he might even fail out of medical school. Such a failure would be tragic given how far Ken had come in his young life. Ken, in fact, was much like Sue, a client from earlier in the book, but from a completely different background. After growing up in an alcoholic family, he felt trapped in a small town in New York's Adirondack North Country. He drove himself mercilessly in high school and gained a scholarship to a reputable college. There, he felt painfully out of place amidst peers from wealthier and less dysfunctional families. He pushed himself to fit in nonetheless, relying heavily on his academic achievements to carve his niche. Ken dreaded his returns to the family home. His father constantly reminded him that college was a waste of time, goading Ken to get a job and support himself. During his drunken outbursts, his father would harangue any family member in sight, taking special delight in belittling Ken's manhood. Ken tolerated this stoically, setting his jaw and resolving to move forward and win his independence. One pivotal day, after a particularly nasty fight, Ken had had enough. He stood toe-to-toe with his father during one of the drunken explosions and announced, quietly but firmly, "I am going to make something of myself." All right, so like I said before, what's really important to understand about Ken is that success in school was not just success in school. Success in school was his ticket out of the world of his youth. It's his independence, it's his self-esteem, it's his self-worth, it's his livelihood, or his chance at livelihood on his own. He felt trapped and misunderstood in the small town that he grew up in. He was an anomaly within his family, and my gosh, how much do I identify with this or relate with this? In short, says the author of this book, Steenbarger, Ken's identity is intertwined with his achievement in medical school. When Ken becomes anxious to the point of paralysis regarding his final, he's not anxious simply about a test. He's petrified, frozen by the possibility of losing himself. His self-esteem is dependent on his performance, which obviously is a surefire recipe for anxiety and failure in any endeavor. As a financial analogy, if medical school is Ken's trading position, he is fully leveraged. All of his emotional eggs are in that one basket. It means everything to him. Whereas most people are emotionally diversified, Ken was not eating, he was not sleeping, he was not dating. All of his care was medical school. I say here, and Brett Steenbarger says Ken's poor test performance on the first pathology exam was a normal drawdown, which is experienced by many other fine students. The other students could weather the drawdown because of their emotional diversification, but Ken was not diversified. Given his 50-to-1 emotional leverage, the normal drawdowns took a fearsome bite out of his psychological bottom line. From an emotional vantage point, his inactivity makes perfect sense. From a logical perspective, it might not make sense. A psychologist might give you an answer like, maybe Ken harbors some sort of secret desire to fail, but that's ridiculous. Like, Ken obviously wants to succeed. From an emotional vantage point, it makes perfect sense because he's not actually protecting his report card. He's protecting his psyche, his sense of self-worth. He's avoiding action in order to avoid experiencing loss. The problem with that strategy, of course, is much like a trader in like the crash of 2000 after the tech bubble popped or burst, holding a position that's losing value day after day after day after day. Eventually he just like turns off the trading screens. He can't even look at it anymore, but he's hoping that he can avoid pain by banishing the horrible reality from consciousness. But of course his decision, which is indecision, it's retaining his exposure to risk. It's keeping him losing money every single day, which is just another example. But anyway, that's the problem. To help Ken then, Steenbarger knew that he has to alter the balance between Ken's perceived risk and reward. He avoided his studies, remember, because it was psychologically riskier for him to try and fail because of what that meant to him or would mean to him than to not try at all. The key to helping him was the therapist recognizing that failing medical school was not, in fact, Ken's most dreaded fear. His greatest nightmare was that his father had been right all along. Ken for years had felt like somewhat of an imposter coming from a small rural town and an uneducated, poor family. He wanted to feel like he belonged. And to try and fail meant facing the devastating reality that maybe he didn't belong. Maybe he would never break free because maybe his family home was where he belonged. So I think that's enough background. We understand where Ken came from, and from a psychologist's perspective, why he might be experiencing the issue that he is. Now comes the solution. What I've attempted to give you here is a recreation of the dialogue that comes from this book. You can read it in the book for yourself if you want, but I've tried to recreate the dialogue so it's a little bit more lively and not just reading to you the whole time. What Steenbarger is going to attempt to do here with Ken, first of all, he breaks his pattern. You'll notice that right from the beginning, where he asks Ken something that he wasn't expecting. You'll see that. And then once he breaks the pattern, then he subtly reframes the way that Ken is viewing school and his options here, so that the way that Steenbarger explains it, he has a bet, a sort of emotional gamble that he reframes from one type to a different type in order to make what used to feel safe feel now threatening, the most threatening thing that there could be. Understanding what Ken's true fear is, which I just said is, his father being right and having to admit that. So you'll see that in the dialogue, the reframe, and then there's one little last thing at the very end there that I think very much speaks to our situation specifically, which is perfectionism. But I'll recap and point all of that out after the dialogue. So let's check it out. Ken, I need you to do me a favor. Can you try something for me? Sure. Whatever you do in the next 2 weeks, I want you to do it honestly. You've always been honest with yourself and your family, I said. Can you continue that now? Yeah, of course. Good. You understand that if you don't study, you'll fail the last exam and the final. That means you'll fail the course. And if you don't study for the other finals, you'll fail those courses as well. That'll make you eligible for dismissal, right? Right. So if you decide not to study, you're really deciding to leave school. If we're being honest with ourselves and each other, that's the bottom line. But I want to study. No, Ken. You want to pass. The last thing you want to do is study, especially if you're going to get another 68. How would that feel to you? To study your heart out, only to get another failing grade. I can't do it. So you don't study. You'll take the default failure rather than put yourself through the agony of trying and then falling short again. And Ken, that's fine. If that's what you choose to do, I'll support your decision. But it'll be very important that you're honest about that decision. What do you mean? Well, Ken, if you opt out of school, you're going to need a place to stay. You're going to have thousands of dollars of financial aid debt coming due. You're going to need to mend fences with your family. Ken, you'll need to let me call your dad and explain what happened. You'll need to apologize and swallow your pride. Let him know he was right all along. What? No, I'm not going to do that. Tell him he was right? Tell him I'm sorry? That I'm not good enough to make it? But Ken, isn't that what you've been telling yourself? That you're not good enough to make it? All I ask is that you be honest. That you say to yourself and what you say to your father be one and the same. I've got to get to studying. Absolutely. You got to study every minute and drive yourself into the ground. You have to stop eating, stop sleeping. You have to so torture yourself with the fear of failure that you put yourself in a state where you literally can't learn. Or you can get back to being Ken and doing the things that have always worked for you. And if you fail, you fail. You won't be the first to fail a course. You'll take it over the summer, get it out of the way, and move on. It won't be fun, but it won't be a killer either. Summer in Burlington, New Orleans, or Chicago sure beats a summer at home, doesn't it? All right, so what's going on here? Let's break it down. How was the psychologist able to break through Ken's perfectionism and paralysis in one sitting? Two things. Okay, first is he's reframing, or reframed, he reframed very subtly. It's kind of tough to catch, and you have to, I'm able to understand it now because after the dialogue in the book, he goes through it, like what he did. What he did was he reframed Ken's options so that what used to feel like the safest option for Ken is now the most threatening. And what used to feel threatening and uncertain is now not necessarily safe or certain, but it's not that big of a deal. Okay, so here it is. The new options for Ken. Option A, certain loss, which for Ken is, again, not the fear of failing out of medical school, that it's what that means to him, which is having to plead with daddy, tail between his legs, which, again, like relating this to me, oh my gosh, that's exactly what it would mean for me. That's devastating to me. And for Ken, the real way to put it, the real power there is it's intolerable. It's not something Ken's willing to put up with, and that's where his determination returns, right? He's like, I gotta get back to the books. But option B is also presented, and this is where the second thing kind of comes in. I mean, it's part of the reframing as well, so there's really like one thing going on, but the second is I distinguish because it's so important. The second thing that the psychologist does is within option B, which is going for it, like giving it a shot, potential gain. The psychologist doesn't just reframe the options before Ken. He also, right after the determination for Ken returns, even though the psychologist at that point probably could have just called it a day because, like, hey, you know, Ken's ready to study again. That's what he wanted, right? The psychologist knows better, though. He knows Ken because he's taking the time to learn about his background, as I emphasized in the beginning of this video. And because of that, he knows that even though the determination is back, there's something more missing because he hasn't yet addressed the fear of failure that Ken is experiencing because of what failure means to him, or failure in medical school means to him. And so what he does is, first of all, he kind of mocks him a little bit out of love. And it's to break his pattern. He kind of says get back to it, torture yourself with the fear of failure and drive yourself into the ground, or get back to being Ken. Relax. Failure, even if you fail, you fail. It's not that big of a deal. You have this option, and they might not be awesome. They might suck a little bit, but hey, they sure beat having to plead with daddy, tail between your legs, right? And Ken's like, you're right. So those are the options that he lays out for him, and that's how he does it. To wrap up, guys, I really encourage you. I mean, if you've already gotten enough value out of the video that you feel like, I don't need anything else, that's fantastic. And I really request that you let me know that you got value out of the video by leaving me a like, maybe even a comment. But if you'd like to go a little bit deeper even, the way that I did this and the way that I have gained such a thorough understanding of this particular chapter of the book is I read it more than once, first of all, but I actually took that dialogue that you just saw and I wrote in one of my journals through it, replacing Ken's name with my own name and replacing Ken's situation and particular details about that life, about his lifestyle, with my own. So that I felt like a psychologist was, assessing me and working me through this solution in terms of my own life. And I have that in my journal. I could share it with you in another day. Maybe I think we're running out of time now. But anyway, if you want to give that a shot, you know, it might take some time, but it's so worth it. Once I got to that end, and man, I had the imaginary psychologist tell me like, Xander, you know, just get back to being you, what you know works for you, and don't worry so much about fearing failure. I'm like, oh my God. It speaks right here, man. I can't even express. So if you feel like going a little bit deeper, I'd encourage you to do something like that. If you've already got enough value of the video, you realize, yeah, you know, I'm good. That's fantastic. And either way, I'd really, you know, please, if you're watching this long, clearly you got value, let me know that I have served you, or let me know that I sucked. Either way, leave me some feedback. Just let me know you're here. Okay, leave me a thumbs up if you like the video. And if you really, really like the video, you really like me, let me know by saying in the comments, Xander, I love you. You changed my life. This is just unbelievable. I can't wait to see what's next. Here's some suggestions. Let me know that you're here, even if it's negative as well. I just, you know, that's why I'm doing this. And so I want to know that you're here. I'm not just speaking to my wall or my camera all the time. I'm actually like, you know, part of the reason I'm building this whole channel and everything is because I want to connect with you guys. I want to really get to know you. I want to go deep. I'm not about quantity so much as I am really in depth. I want to feel that. And so participate with me. And until next time, my friends, have a great week. I'll see you next time, next Saturday. See you guys.